Good evening, all. Louis Miguel, Aleixo from BRIK Projects. How are you all? Yeah, another episode this week. The weeks come around very quickly. To the weekly BRIK Q&A episode. We always have a topic. Today we're talking about secondary markets. Yeah, we just wait a few minutes for people to join us live. If just wait a couple of minutes. Saying if you see Neil Bort is joining us live, welcome. Hope you're well and hope you enjoy. Yeah, look, today's session, as I said, dealing in terms of talking about secondary markets in terms of our tokenized real estate. So yeah, look, it's as most of you know, we tokenize the real estate property here in Australia. But yeah, we'll go into the formalities afterwards. But yeah, while we wait for a few minutes, sort of just reflecting on the past week, some of the things that have been happening here and down under in Australia, Brisbane, where we're based. Yeah, look, it's sort of reflecting on the week, the past week. We had Tron and Monica. Tron is actually the co-founder of the Ravencoin blockchain, and he was the lead developer of the Ravencoin blockchain, and still very heavily involved in terms of with the Ravencoin community. But yeah, look, I actually introduced them to the BRIK Koala, the Koala property, the Brisbane property here. Well, while they were here, we actually put some photos up in terms of both of them meeting the Koala property here at Hamilton Hill, where the property is based at. So yeah, they love the property and some of the properties around there as well in terms of where we're tokenizing real estate property around the Hamilton area. Yeah, so I hope they're having a fantastic holiday. They continue on their journey up to North Queensland, the Whitsunday Islands, and the beautiful part of the world there. Yeah, so I hope they're having a fantastic time. And not too sure whether they're actually back in the US, but shout out to Tron and Monica. Hope he's enjoying yourselves. If back, hope he's settled back home. If he's back in the US. But yeah, look, what else has been happening? Braveland, actually the Ravencoin community, we had a get together last weekend, the monthly event at Braveland. A few hiccups, but we won't go into that in terms of the actual metaverse. But it was a great get together in terms of it was all about the marketplaces, asset marketplaces that are tokenizing, that are basically marketplaces for people that are tokenizing assets on the Ravencoin blockchain. So it was a great meetup. Last Saturday, if you're in the US, it was Sunday here in Australia. But yeah, it was a great get together. What has else been happening? It was yes, last Friday. Well, Friday Australian time. It was Thursday the US. Sat down with C3 Media, John, Blockchain John, and Jake as well. We sat down and had a good chat in terms of what we're doing here in tokenizing real estate, and got to share some of the more in-depth details about my journey in terms of my background and how I came about tokenizing real estate. So we actually put that up on Twitter Space. It was actually a YouTube video that C3 Media put up of the sit down, and really enjoyed having a chat with those two gentlemen. It was very interesting conversations that I really enjoyed in sharing some of the things that especially me in terms of where in terms of my journey today. So get the shout out to Blockchain John and also Jake. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for your time. That we ended up probably going for longer than we had planned, but really enjoyed it. And again, it's up on our YouTube channel, BRIK Projects, and also on C3 Media, and some of in terms of Twitch, also up on there. So yeah, so very responsive depending where you watch your content. So it's all up on there. Yeah, what else has been happening? Yeah, actually last week I was actually down down the Gold Coast, where our BRIK Dolphin property is based. Our first one on the Ravencoin blockchain that we launched last November, which our second property, but our first one on the Ravencoin blockchain. So the BRIK Dolphin. So I was down there for some meetings, and also done some footage while I was driving. I had the phone filming while driving what was up ahead. It was all very legit. It was up on the cradle on the actual car, and was filming what was ahead. And so we drove. I drove through Surfers Paradise, showing, especially around Surfers Paradise area, which is the heart of the Gold Coast when it comes to tourism and the beaches. And so it's so show some of those scenery in terms of what is actually happening around Surfers Paradise, both on the beaches and around the buildings and the high rises around there. So so I put that actually up on the post, on the Twitter post. So check it out. Created some NFTs of the videos and the photos taken. So it's been minted on the Ravencoin and gifted out. So so Neil Bort, given you actually join us live, I'd love to send you one of those photo NFTs and videos if you like. Just DM me. Just DM me, given that you joined live. DM me on Twitter. And if you've got a Ravencoin Asset Aware wallet address, please state what it is so we can get that over to you. Paul's also joined us. How are you, Paul? So I'll just make note of that so I don't forget. And given that Paul's also joined us, there'll be one going your way too, Paul. How are you, Paul? You well? And yeah, look, I'll send those out from my journeys last week on the Gold Coast. Some of those NFTs of photos and videos that I minted. That I always like to record them on the blockchain in terms of they'll show the vision and some of the stuff that's happening around there. So yeah. Well, it's getting to 10 past. I think been enough reflections. We'll get stuck into the content for this week. But we go back to this bit of formality. So yeah, look, in terms of myself, I'm Miguel Aleixo. I'm the Managing Director and Co-Founder of BRIK Projects. We tokenise real estate property here in Australia, specifically focusing around Brisbane and the Gold Coast at this stage. We will introduce a third and final area in next year at the Sunshine Coast up north. But yeah, so we tokenise luxury real estate and property, single family homes. At this stage, we've got two properties. We've got one in Brisbane, which is the Koala property, and we've also got the Dolphin property, which is the Gold Coast property. So they are alive and well, and people can actually buy property tokens in them on our property tokens platform. So check it out. Check out our website in terms of with all the full details on those properties. But yeah, look, in terms of today, we're focusing around secondary markets in terms of our secondary market, and obviously our intentions to also go and list our property tokens on other external secondary markets. But at this stage, we're just focusing in terms of what we're doing in terms of our own internal property tokens platform. But yeah, so we just probably just sort of give a bit of in terms of what is a secondary market and how it sort of ties in terms of what we're doing with our property tokens. So with our property tokens at the moment, we've got two live properties, as I mentioned earlier. And once we actually sell all those property tokens, we settle on the property, and then the journey actually officially begins in terms of the properties being rented out. And obviously in terms of the ability for people then to actually trade those on a secondary market. So within our platform, people will be able to actually trade amongst each other on the secondary market. People that actually do take them to their wallets. So for example, the Dolphin property, people that do actually take their property tokens to their own wallets, they can trade between each other peer-to-peer in terms of those BRIK Dolphin tokens. The only sort of condition is basically when you do sell to somebody, that buyer must be KYC and AML verified on our platform. so they can actually be able to receive those dolphin tokens. So the tokens have been tagged in terms of making sure that people that actually are basically receiving them have been verified. So again, just one of those compliance things that we must adhere to. So but yeah, so that's the only thing. But people can then sort of actually trade them also on the secondary market on our platform between each other. So so we've got a lot of flexibility in terms of, but again, that sort of explains how the secondary market fits in in terms of what we're doing. But if I could sort of go back to the basic fundamentals in terms of real estate, firstly, because at the end of the day, why do we need a secondary market? And sort of we go back to fundamentals to sort of go just cover some of the key points around that. And again, with real estate, as we all know, real estate is long term. It's consistent, it's long term, and most countries around the world, as it is here in Australia, it's you buy real estate, but you don't buy with the intention of selling it tomorrow. Real estate consistently grows over time. Here in Australia, in terms of the areas we're focusing on, typically doubles every 10 years. So real estate, the fundamental is the objective is to hold real estate long term. The most wealthiest people in the world, if you have a look at their wealth portfolio, a substantial amount of their wealth is actually tied in real estate, whether it be commercial, residential, industrial. There's a mix in terms of what they have, but quite a substantial amount of their wealth is tied up in real estate. When we sort of have a look at the middle class in most Western countries, again, if you look at their portfolio of wealth, it is substantially tied up in real estate property. Because again, that's obviously in some of the developing countries a little bit different in terms of the wealth that again they're aspiring to. And again, it's as we see in terms of what tokenized real estate can do for those developing countries and also Western countries. It is going to be the new frontier. But if we just sort of have a look at those fundamentals around real estate, I've just got a couple of points here, making sure I don't miss any of these fundamental points that I wanted to talk about. If we have a look at real estate, and if you ever look at throughout the years in over the last 100, 200 years, if you're specifically around the last 100 years, it is very much generational wealth in terms of some of these families that typically pass some of their wealth in terms of the properties that they actually own in their portfolio to the next generation. And I know if we sort of look in terms of here in Australia, some of the big property owners, like the Frank Lowys in terms of the Westfield Shopping Centre Group founders, and again, just see that's happening there. Obviously, if you look at America, some of the Rothschild and some of the other players over there, and you see in terms of how their wealth has been passed, and a lot of the time in some you see that wealth in property, the real estate portfolio being passed from generation to generation. So again, it's very much a big part of anybody's wealth. That property is always a big part of it. So the problem we've got is that obviously as property values can keep increasing, and obviously with the increase in interest rates and the tightening of policy from a banking perspective in terms of banks borrowing money, or any financial institution borrowing money to buy property, that continues to be harder and harder. So what we have in terms of traditional real estate, it's becoming harder and harder for the average person to be able to start or even trying to accumulate more real estate property of some of these issues that's occurring and will continue to occur and continue to get worse. So again, it's so why do we need a secondary market given that property is held long term? And the thing about tokenized real estate, it's because you actually have exposure to the benefits of real estate via a fractional property token, which is actually a fraction of that property. So you don't own the whole property, but you own a fraction of that property. You've got all the benefits that comes with the exposure of all the property benefits that comes with that property token. Again, it provides the flexibility and more liquidity to be able to have that exposure to real estate, because otherwise, as I said, a person to buy a property, you either buy a whole property, you don't buy the whole property, you can't buy a fraction of a property in traditional real estate. So again, in tokenized real estate, you basically have the ability to buy a fraction of the property, but also knowing that the ease in terms of where it's recorded on the blockchain, the transparency, and the ability to buy and sell, for that matter, in terms of very quickly. Basically, within a few minutes, you have the ability to have exposure to a property by that way, in terms of how these property tokens are on the blockchain. So again, it's sometimes blockchain can be overwhelming for somebody coming in first and hearing in terms of what blockchain is all about. I'll keep it very simple. Blockchain it's just another ledger, a database that's public, that obviously sits up in virtually, in terms of that anybody can look at it. So again, it's blockchain is just it's just another public ledger that we all sort of a few years ago we all became sort of exposed to cloud-based software databases. Well, this is sort of next stage in terms of a blockchain, but the blockchain ledger is basically anybody can have a look in terms of what's going on the ledger. So, but yeah, so just coming back to in terms of why have a secondary market, and again, the secondary market provides that ability of ease for people to go in and out of property tokens. And given that I said property was long term, again, when people go on their journey in life, there's various things that happen, and sometimes people need to access funds. In terms of it might be a health condition that's happened to a family member, or and basically they need to get access to emergency funds. So you think of it, trying to sell a property to get access to emergency funds, where you've got a property and trying to sell that property, it's pretty hard, right? But again, with property tokens and tokenized real estate, you can basically sell some, all, depending what funds you need to access those emergency funds. There's also, in terms of life, in terms of people go on their journey and have certain aspirations and goals, and they might have set their target to buy their home to live in. Again, it's rather than waiting to buy, they can start accumulating fractions of a property tokens to get exposure to the real estate benefits. So at some stage, they might want to buy their own home and use those funds to basically sell out of their property tokens to be able to buy their home, their first home. In terms of funding college, people want to go to college, and again, it's whether the kids are going to college or basically trying to get to college and funding that college expense, which can be quite substantial in certain parts of the world. I mean, we're fortunate here in Australia that our universities, we do have government that actually does pay for our university degrees on loan, and then we pay the government back for it once we start working and earning a certain level. So, but I know some parts of the world aren't as fortunate as that in terms of the funding of college or university degrees. So again, it's with tokenized real estate, provides people that have flexibility to start accumulating with a goal in mind in terms of what they want to do. And again, I just also make a point that this is not financial advice. This is just basic general information in terms of tokenized real estate and some of the things that you can do, and some of the things in terms of to do with the secondary market. So again, not financial advice. Make sure you do your own research around these things that we talk about. And again, in terms of some families might want to establish, as I said before, in terms of generational wealth. It might be that some families are trying to establish a certain level of wealth around property, and they might do it in having a global property portfolio made up of tokenized real estate from all parts of the world, and with the objective that when they do pass that on to the next generation through their estate, they've got the ability to have this portfolio of tokenized real estate that can be liquidated in a more in a more controlled manner, so that that can be passed on to the various family members that are beneficiaries of the estate, but being done in a controlled manner in terms of how these property tokens are sold, to then be able to basically provide those funds to the family members who are beneficiaries, who have different views of in terms of risk profiles, in terms of investments, or just different outlooks in life in terms of what they want to do with the money. So again, this is where the secondary market provides that liquidity and basically flexibility in terms of people do with their property portfolio made up of tokenized real estate. So yeah, just some things there in terms of, again, how does that secondary markets work, and how do we sort of deal, how we're sort of structured in terms of the secondary market. And as I said earlier, again, for us, it's starting within our platform first, and our goal is later on is to have a look at other secondary markets where we can actually list those on other secondary markets as well, so provide a bit more liquidity. So but yeah, so that's all I wanted to cover on secondary markets. I'll open up today's Twitter space for any questions. I had a question during the week, but again, I always prioritize people that do join us live, and be able to provide the ability for people to ask questions. That's what this session's all about. That I do every week. It's the BRIK Q&A, as the name mentions. So if you'd like a mic, please ask for a mic if you want to ask any questions. And given saying hello to Blockchain John, who actually has joined us, and also C3 Media. Hello, John. You're actually also now part of the NFT gift that I promised of the my Gold Coast journey last week, around the Gold Coast. And when I was driving around between meetings, at the end of the day, I did actually mint some NFT photos, videos of my drive through the Gold Coast. So, John, you'll be getting one of those too, because you've joined us live. Yeah, actually, I did get a question throughout the week. And again, like I said, if there's any questions, rather prioritize people that join us live. And but the question I got during the week was actually quite topical, because the question was, how do I sell my property tokens? So the answer is that basically we've got to wait till the properties are all the property tokens are sold in each respective. So that, for example, the BRIK Dolphin, once we sell all those BRIK Dolphin property tokens, then the journey starts, and basically then you can actually sell your BRIK Dolphin tokens on the secondary market on our platform. So until then, you can't. But so I encourage the current token holders to spread the message, tell your friends and family, tell your contacts in terms of what we're doing here in Australia in tokenized real estate. Get them involved, because again, the sooner we can sell all those BRIK Dolphin tokens, the sooner the journey starts in selling that property, and the sooner we can start generating rent. It's adding Paul as with the mic. How are you, Paul? Just connecting there. How are you, Paul? You good?
Good, thank you very much. It's what time is it? 9 in the morning here in the UK. I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good, good. So the day's starting for you. Nice, good weather.
It's a bit down to minus something or another, so it's slightly cold outside, but other than that, it's good. There's no rain, which is a massive improvement in the UK.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's actually, we've had pretty hot days actually in Brisbane, but yeah, it's good. It's 6:30 at night here, so just closing up the day. But yeah, all good, all good.
Fantastic. Property market in Australia. We know that like a recession's coming on. Also, is the Olympics and stuff like that's going to Australia. So, yes. What's happening with the what's like that? The value of property over there?
Yeah, look, in terms of at the moment, if we look at the interest rates, so we had yesterday had another 0.25% increase. So we had cash rates in 3.6%, which was the 10th rise in interest rates here in Australia in a row. So our Reserve Bank governor came out today and said that we should see a bit of easing next month to sort of sit and wait what the impacts will be on the inflation here in Australia. So I think they've gone a bit too aggressive in my personal view, but that's just my opinion. But obviously that always has an impact in terms of the lower end of the market, property market, as far as in terms of not so much, there's not much of an impact as far as in terms of massive impacts on values in that lower end of the market. So first home buyers market's been huge increase in people getting, because there was some grants by the government and encouragement, obviously with obviously with the issues of the COVID and the scary bit that things might have gone unraveled, given in terms of what was happening with COVID. Government here actually introduced quite a few grants for first home buyers. So that increased a lot of the construction in terms of first homes, people building the first homes. But obviously now with interest rates sort of fast track now with 10 increases in interest rates, those people that actually got into the market for the first time, obviously it's going to impact them. It's going to impact. So, but in terms of that middle part of the market to the higher end of the market, that continues to still crazy. The problem we've got here is in terms of accommodation, in terms of housing, is a major issue between supply and demand. We've had a lot of migration come from Sydney and Melbourne into Brisbane and Gold Coast. We handled COVID a lot better than down there. I mean, Melbourne had the record number of days in lockdown during the COVID period, so they had 282 days in lockdown, which was quite extreme. I think it's actually, I think it is on record, the most days in the world in lockdown. Whereas here in Brisbane and Gold Coast, we had 10 days in the whole period of COVID. So it's a huge difference between the two. So that's caused a lot of people come up to here. Obviously, we got the better weather in terms of lifestyle, and so some of those people have been coming in by the droves. So in that sort of middle to higher in the market, it's continued to, things go on auction. And just like if I look last weekend, some of the properties that went off, and some of the houses here in Brisbane that ordinarily, say, 2 years ago, you'd sort of be paying around $600,000, $650,000 it is just very ordinary homes, and around 20 kilometres north of Brisbane, one in particular that comes to mind. And now that same property, people paid $1.2 million on the weekend for it, which is crazy. Like again, so that middle to high in the market, it continues to go along. Again, migration, we see migration not just from down south, but also we see migration from overseas, expats coming back, but also migration in general, because we've got a massive skill shortage here in Brisbane, Brisbane and Gold Coast. In the Sunshine Coast, there's a massive skill shortage because we've got obviously projects that are already in the mix in terms of some towers. We've got with this the Queen's Wharf, which is the new casino precinct that's being built at the moment. So that still will go until next year in terms of all the construction around there. We've got obviously Olympics in 2032, and again, people are starting to set themselves up to obviously some of the executives of sponsors, companies involved with Olympics in terms of where they're going to be setting up over the next 10 years. I know it sounds a long way ahead, but some of these decisions that are made in terms of some of the companies how they set themselves up with the planning for the Olympics, it starts happening right now. I mean, from in terms of actual infrastructure, we've only seen some civil so far in terms of the Olympic Village, which is actually at the very extreme east end of Hamilton, where we are for the Koala property and where I'm also based. I actually showed Sean Black actually when he was here last week in terms of the Olympic Village, some of the civils that have started already there. So again, it's with property values in the next 10, 12 years, it's going to be obviously on the continual growth side of things. as I said earlier, the bottom end of the market, the first-time buyers, they'll sort of, take a breather, and probably in a couple of years' time start ranking up again. But in terms of the middle market and the high-end market of property values, they'll continue to increase strongly over the next 12 years. I mean, the expectation is what happens is around 3 years out before the Olympics, as we experienced here in 2000 Sydney Olympics, it just goes into turbo mode as far as values are concerned. It just goes crazy. But again, if we say crazy, we've had here in Brisbane some of these properties that that we're focusing on. We've seen some of these properties go up 36% in value just in the last 12 months. Again, it's it might sound is that sustainable, but it is, because we've got a lot of things that are in the mix in terms of what's happening. But yeah. So it'd be interesting in terms of these interest rates, but I don't see interest rates, even if there's a couple more to go this year, I don't see that having an impact at all in terms of that middle to high end of the property market, residential property market. Yeah. That was sort of a long answer to your question, Paul.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a good answer, and it's quite comprehensive as well. Here in the UK, we've got similar issues. Certainly, I've noticed in Europe where people are moving away from city centres, especially in places like France as well, and moving away from city centres. Again, that was directly affected by lockdown, where they just realised they didn't want to be in city centres, in flats and stuff like that, and wanted places away with more breathing space and all the rest of it. So it's interesting how the demographics, what have you, has changed over time.
It's funny you say that, Paul. That some of those people that cashed in their nice homes, some of those that obviously, I mean, some of these people, they've had their properties 10, 20 years, some even like 5 years, and obviously sitting on a very nice capital growth over those years. But some of those that actually cashed in and that are here in Brisbane and the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast, they decided to actually buy some of the regional areas because obviously with COVID, they wanted exactly what you're saying. They wanted the spaces, they wanted the lifestyle in terms of more laid back lifestyle. So they went away from the city centres and they've gone to some of the regional. Because again, obviously in terms of technology, with Zoom and so forth, and be able to work from home, obviously that changed everything in terms of people given that ability to be able to work from home, and obviously with employers having the confidence that people can work from home. So I think we went through quite a big increase in some of the people wanting to buy properties in regional areas, which they did. And the regional areas, some of these property values in the regional areas, they went crazy. It's settled down now, but during the sort of last couple of years, some of those values went up substantially. Because I was actually, Melinda and I actually went for a drive actually a couple of weeks ago to one of these regional areas, and I always love to pop around to the real estate agent, see what's happening in the window. And some of the properties that was sold, you just shake your head. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, so we're about similarities in terms of regional. What's to you, Paul?
The mic button just then. So I think one of the disadvantages we've got here in the UK is we've got a small island packed out full of people, so we're squashed in like lemons. So standard supply and demand means house prices are going to go up all the time. It's interesting as well, you were saying how a lot of Australians are migrating back to Australia because of the need for the skills there. I think some of my colleagues were saying about that here in Manchester and Birmingham. People were going back home. Yeah,
it's quite common. Like some of the properties around the BRIK Koala property, though, in terms of these properties that were bought, quite a lot of them have been bought by expats coming back, Australians that have been working in London or New York, LA. and they're coming back, and they're spending, because obviously they're bringing pounds, they're bringing US dollars to here, given obviously, as we know, our Australian dollar's been weak of late. So they're bringing pounds or US dollars and being able to pay $7 million, $8 million for a house. So that's what sort of, so I'm talking about US dollars. In some of these, so I know one down the road from the BRIK that went for $8 million US. So again, that's sort of, it is a common thing that's happening. But even in addition to Australians coming back home that have been overseas, I think we also see a lot of migration come from other countries like UK and US, especially UK. Obviously, it's always been a common place in terms of where a lot of English do migrate to in terms of Australia. And I think we're going to see quite a lot more in terms of over the next few years, because again, we've got massive labour shortage, both skilled labour and blue collar labour, skilled blue collar. So again, some of these things that are happening here, like everybody I talk to people at the coal front in terms of business owners, and the major problem at the moment, no one can get staff to be able to sort of come out of this recovery, and given the opportunities that's happening here. The problem here is actually trying to get staff, and no one can find staff. And again, a way to address that is obviously we need migration, just like this, what we went through here in Australia in the 80s, where there was a massive gap between in terms of labour shortages in construction, and the only way that Australia we were able to address that was through in terms of migration from other countries. And again, we're going through this stage where I think this time around, I think it's skills shortages, labour shortages across quite a vast different areas in terms of professionals. And obviously we've got a massive shortage of doctors, for example. We've got a massive shortage of carpenters. We've got, you name it. At the moment, we just we need that migration, and the only way we're going to fulfill that is through migration from other countries. So I guess it's we can't actually address the issue internally with them in terms of labor resources. Yeah. So spread the word, Paul, over there in the UK, that we're looking for people.
I know Australia, certainly with the Fed getting fine on crypto, certainly nothing to do with the budget, just crypto in general. Certainly America getting stuff on crypto. Britain is brilliant, because for example, the Corn Bureau, who I followed, has moved to Dubai. What's happening with crypto regulations in Australia?
Look, at things at the moment, it's a very soft approach. They're saying at the moment, they've got this pilot. So through the Reserve Bank here in Australia, they're actually running a pilot. I think it's supposed to be completed by next month. I'm not sure at what stage, if it is still on track, but they were actually using bonds as a way to tokenize bonds on the blockchain. They're using the Ethereum blockchain. So they're actually using it as a bit of a pilot to see how it would work. So again, it's positive from that perspective, but in the same breath, they're also testing in terms of how central currencies, government currencies, are also, so they're also looking at that, how that also might work in terms of central government digital currency. So again, that's something that obviously we all, when we start talking about control and government controlling people, what they spend their money on, that's not a good thing. So again, it is something that they're talking in as part of that whole pilot project that the Reserve Bank's actually, it's under their banner. But at the moment, it's pretty soft. Just to give you an example of what the approach has been here, and how, in terms of what's happening at the coal front, one of our four major banks, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, so that they actually got two things there. They're looking at using XRP to transfer foreign, in terms of to be able to transfer funds overseas. They're looking at the XRP network blockchain to be able to do it. So again, they've made that very transparent. They announced that, so they've got a whole team working on that at the moment. So again, that's a positive. The same bank is also late last year, they announced that people, in terms of on their phone, in terms of having the app for the online banking, they will also be able to have a certain number of cryptos on there. Obviously, with Bitcoin and Ethereum, they'll be able to trade on their same app banking app. So I think they'll talk about a limited number of cryptos, obviously some of the blue chip ones. So people will be able to actually trade their cryptos on their online bank app on the phone. So again, given those things, and again, it's, you know, governments always direct banks in a certain way in terms of what they want to control. And given that they've been very much transparent in terms of what they're doing, and governments haven't said anything, it can only be positive in terms of what's happening over here from those things. Like I said, in terms of central bank currencies, is probably the thing that we all hate. I don't agree with, but again, I think all governments are looking at doing some sort of form of their own digital currencies to have that control. But yeah, in all, at the moment, I think it's very positive in terms of the government's view in terms of cryptos and blockchain. There is some discussions around it in terms of they're asking for public opinion and discussions around it all in terms of as they move forward over the next 6 months. But it'll be interesting what the outcomes is in terms of this pilot program under the Reserve Bank. Yeah. So I think we're sort of at the other extreme at this stage anyway of where the US sits, because we all know the US does sit at the extreme end in terms of with good old Gary and the SEC.
That's it. Some questions for me.
Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate you coming on and participating with the questions. Really appreciate it. They actually see the Indy did pop into the space. How are you, Indy? Hope you're well. And Indy is also going to get one of those photo video NFTs that from the Gold Coast last week. Well, I think that's all the content I want to cover today, and thank you for the questions, Paul. And again, and also the question that I got through during the week. Who was actually part of the Ravencoin community. So thank you for that. But yeah, again, that's just sort of looking at the wrap up. Tomorrow we've got, in terms of what is real estate tokenization, and tomorrow we're actually going to be talking about the, in terms of if you're a 20 to a 30-year-old, how are you actually getting into real estate? You know, it's traditional in terms of traditional real estate, and you know, what are the issues that as from a person that typically is coming into real estate for the first time, be able to access real estate. And so tomorrow is a show which is a more of a generic. It's not about BRIK BC. It's more of an education that we do every week, and we welcome people to come on and participate in the conversation. But tomorrow we'll be focusing around the 20 to 30-year-olds in terms of their views on real estate, and how they actually see their journey to be able to access real estate. So again, thank you all for joining today. Much appreciated. Stay safe. Have a fantastic evening, fantastic day if your day is about to start over in the UK. And I'm actually surprised that Blockchain John is actually up, because it's actually quite late for John. But thank you for joining, John. Well, take care of all, and same time, same place next week. Thank you so much. Bye for now.